Hello guys, it's the Red Shadow and I am back with another video. And this is a video I almost didn't make because I didn't really think about doing it until a couple of hours ago, once I kind of saw on my social medias and on the internet and whatnot what today was, especially this particular anniversary. But today is the 25th anniversary of the release of the Nintendo 64 in North America on September 29th, 1996. 25 years, hard to believe that it's been that long. Kind of freaks me out a little bit, but I thought, you know what, I could sit down and make probably a relatively short video about the N64, some of my thoughts on it, and like I said, just to acknowledge the birthday that it's experiencing today. So I thought really quick I would show a few select things from my collection, N64. I don't have a massive collection and I don't play it much at all nowadays. There's a few N64 games that I love that I have other means by which to play them if I were to sit down and want to do so. But I like I said, I have an N64 and have for quite a while. This is not my original N64. This is something I've picked up within the last decade, I'd say. But anyway, here is my N64 console that I currently use. Last used it about a year and a half ago or so. For a brief period of time, I didn't have an LED TV. My Samsung that I'd had for almost 10 years had pooped out on me in November of 2019. And I was able to get a new TV a couple months into 2020. Wasn't able to do it any quicker than that, unfortunately. So for a few years, I moved the CRT that's in my bedroom here into the living room, and I played some N64, I played some PS1, I played some stuff like that, PS1, PS2. And then when I replaced my dead LED with this new one, I moved the CRT back into the bedroom. And every other console that I have, I've basically had a good way to hook it up to my flat screen, except for the N64. Now I know that there are adapters out there, and I'm using an adapter on my PS2 to play it on this. It's not great, but it's workable. I just haven't felt inclined to do that with this. If I buy another $30 component and it doesn't do much for this, I'm not really one to spend hundreds of dollars on ways to make old consoles look good on the newer TVs. I'd rather just buy games for the newer systems. But this still exists, it still works, and I still, you know, have a time with it every once in a while. So there's my N64. I want to show the controllers that I have. It's kind of a standard gray normal controller. You know, the unusual combination of having a bright gray controller on a console that's kind of a dark gray, instead of having it match up with the console. And then I've had a lot of different controllers over the years, but this is the stuff that I still have left. I've got a green controller here. I think this is just a standard green controller. I don't know that this is a part of any kind of a special set. I know they made multiple colors of controllers and consoles for the N64 over the years. And for a short period of time, I fancied myself as an actual N64 collector, but I'll talk here in a bit about why I don't really collect for it hardcore anymore. But as part of all that, I did end up with one of these blue and yellow Pokemon controllers. I think there was two Pokemon controllers. I think one was a standalone controller and one came with a Pokemon console, or maybe there were two Pokemon consoles and two different Pokemon controllers. I'm not a big Pokemon fan. I'm not a big Pokemon guy in general. So this was, like I said, just something I picked up when I was collecting for the N64, and now I just have it. Maybe one of these days I'll sell it down the road. We'll see. And then the most recent controller that I bought, and sad to say I still haven't even used this yet, is the Retro Fighters N64 controller. The reason why I wanted to get this, because I was excited about the idea of something that was more of a normal controller and not the 3-dong controller. And I thought, oh, well, this might be fun and might pull me back into the N64. It never did. Like I said, this is still tied up and bundled up here from when I took it out of its box. I just have not felt compelled to play anything N64 wise in so long. And like I said, a big reason for that is there's only a couple of games from the N64 that really excited me overall. Like, it has like 300-ish games, like just under 300 North American releases and exclusives in Japan and Europe. But it doesn't have a lot of games overall. And yet, the more I tried the games back in the 90s, I had a console I got in, I believe, 1998, and then sold the next year. I got an N64 again in the 2000s, and then within a few years got rid of it, and then I got this one I just showed earlier in the 2010s. I want to say probably between 2012, 2014, something like that. Each time I do it, I try to find more games, try new things on the console. I watch plenty of YouTube videos about N64 games and people talking about their hidden gems, people talking about games that kind of went under the radar, games that might be like a 6 or a 7 out of 10 but are still worth trying. I try stuff that looks interesting to me, and half the time they just don't yield positive results. I have a foundation of massive N64 love back in the late 90s that are based around pretty much one game, and that's Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, of which I don't even have an NTSC copy of that game. My favorite Zelda game, my favorite N64 game, I don't own the cartridge for it because I can play it on consoles like the GameCube collections that could then be played on the Wii, backwards compatibility. I still have a Wii, it's not hooked up right now. I wish the Wii U did both Wii and GameCube games. That would have been awesome. But I have a way to play it through that. So I don't feel the need to search for a cartridge when I have it on disc. And if you're into any of that kind of stuff, you know that nowadays cartridges are really easy to fake. And so if you're going to a secondhand store, if you're buying off eBay, if you're going to garage sales, if you're going any of these multiple routes out in the wild, as they say, you don't know for sure whether or not you're buying something that's legit. And even though a bunch of people will tell you to get special tools and open up cartridges or ask whoever's selling the game to open it up and let you see stuff, I don't know what the hell I'm looking at on those boards or whatever they call them. I have so little interest in knowing about any of that technical shit that even if it keeps me from exploring a console's library because I don't want to learn all that stupid nonsense I shouldn't have to, I'm just going to miss out. But I do have Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time for N64. It's just the Japanese copy. It had been my desire when I was trying to be a little bit more of an active N64 collector to get the Japanese, North American, and Europe versions of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. 6 total games in their boxes, complete to an extent. If it was at least box, cartridge, manual, that would have been more than fine for me. Japanese copies are almost always well preserved. They took care of their games, unlike us, this throwaway community. So this is pretty well everything that you would imagine for it. I'm not going to open it up and unbox it. I may have done it on a previous video, who knows. But I wanted to show this because this is my favorite thing in my N64 collection right now by far. It's really cool. Artwork is really, really nice. I still love the gold North American cover as well, and I will always prefer the games in in a widescreen or horizontal thing as opposed to these vertical boxes. But this artwork is pretty dope, and I just appreciate having it in my collection. It was almost perfectly immaculate, other than the basic rubbing on the corners, and I had it displayed on the other side of where the TV is. There's shelves over here with a bunch of collector's edition and special edition boxes. This used to sit up there, and gravity kept pulling it down, and it fell a few times, and it really did a number on some of these corners. And I've got I don't know if it'll be easy to see, but there's a tear in the box. So I just put it in my bedroom in the little plastic like storage drawers that I have all my N64 stuff in, and keep it in there where it's a little bit better protected. So I've got a stack of some games that I wanted to show off. Just a few things that I'm particularly fond of on the console in one way or another, and then we'll just call it good on this video. Like I said, I wanted to try to keep it short. Obviously, aside from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, which I've never played, this was one of my favorite N64 games back in the day. Now, I think that there are two kinds of fans of GoldenEye. There are those who played it back in the day and thought it was fantastic, and they loved it, and today they go back and play it, and they're like, oh, this didn't age well. I'm one of those. I think this game was phenomenal back then. Loved playing with my friends, loved playing around on the levels by myself. Never beat it because I thought it was tough. Back then I just thought the game was tough, and the more I try it nowadays, I just think that it's incredibly unintuitive in its control scheme, and that controller, as much as I love the N64 controller, I don't think the control scheme for this game was great. They were learning what they could about first-person shooter games back then, but excuse me, it was honed to a much better point as the years went on. There are like 007 Reloaded or like some sort of a remake game that I don't hear a lot of people talking about. I own a copy of it on one console or another. I think I have the Wii version. I thought I had that for 360, but I want to get that version and play it sometime just to see if it's like a remake of this or if it's just sort of a reimagining of GoldenEye. But one way or another, I still enjoy having this in my collection. It's, you know, it's just iconic N64 game. Now, this is one of, if not my absolute favorite Rare game, and it might surprise some people, but it's old Donkey Kong 64. I'm not a big fan of Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie. I have played some of Conker's Bad Fur Day, but not all the way through. Last time I owned it, I ended up just selling it on to somebody else because I figured someone else would like it more. Their style of platforming collectathon games, much like Super Mario 64, do not impress me much. They don't do anything for me. But Donkey Kong 64, maybe it's just because of how much I really latched on to Donkey Kong in the Super Nintendo era with the Donkey Kong Country games. And I just wanted to will this into being a perfect version of that. It's not a perfect game. It's all over the place, and I haven't really gotten anywhere in the game to give it a full assessment. But I go back to it and I try it. I don't do that with Banjo. I don't do that with Conkers. I don't do that with Super Mario 64 at all. Yeah, that game is not in my collection, just to answer that question, if anybody's wondering. I do not like Super Mario 64. But Donkey Kong 64 I can have some fun with and try to go with it as far as I can. Talk about a game that I would love to see some sort of a remake, a remodernization of this, even if it wasn't by Rare. If it was just sort of Donkey Kong, big open world platforming collectathon game, I would love to see that come to fruition. I don't know if that game is on Rare Replay, if Donkey Kong 64 is on there or not. I can't play Rare Replay because I don't have an Xbox One, but I would love knowing if that's on there. If I did ever get it, it would be something fun to revisit. And then the last two games, 3 cartridges, but the last 2 games, because for some reason or another I discovered that one of my favorite games that I played back on the N64, Battle Tanks, I've got 2 copies of this for some reason. I also had 2 copies of Acclaim's WWF Warzone. This is why I have an app on my phone nowadays, people, so to make sure that I don't do shit like this. But I love this game. It's so much fun. The amount of destructibility that you could do in this game on the N64 back in those days just blew my mind, blowing buildings up and other tanks. It's kind of slowish, and it's something I've never beat, but I still like to go back and play it. 2 or 3 years ago when I went on a little bit of an N64 binge, I put a bunch of time into these just to see how things would go and how far I could get into it. And then the last thing that I want to show is Battletanks' sequel, Battletanks Global Assault. Yeah, it's just more of the same, more tank action, more blowing everything up. And every time I sit down and I think about these games, or I want to sit down and play them, I'm reminded of the commercial, or a specific commercial for one or the other. I don't know if it was the first game or this one, of what was called the Snuggle Bear back in those days. Snuggle fabric softeners and dryer sheets had a mascot that was like this little cuddly teddy bear that was so soft and cuddly, because it was a product of Snuggle, and Nintendo, or probably in this case 3DO, decided in their advertising to make fun of the Snuggle Bear, of all things to make fun of on a Battletanks game, to have the Battletanks come out and roll across a field while Snuggle was running through the meadow, and shoot it apart and blow it up and light it on fire. It was just hilarious. I'm pretty sure it's all over YouTube, that commercial, so check it out. One of my favorite gaming commercials of all time. So yeah, anyway, that's just a little look at some of my stuff. I've got, like I said, a bunch of other games, wrestling games. I got Toy Story 2, I think it is. I've got Daikatana, George Romero's. No, not George Romero's. I can't think of his name now. But it's the guy who I think was responsible for things like Doom or Quake or one of those games. Probably shouldn't have brought that up without knowing, but I know that it's a not a very well received game, and I think the value on the cartridge has actually been going up lately. And anyway, I've got Daikatana, I've got Cyber Tiger's golf game, I've got Ken Griffey Jr.'s Slugfest, or whatever baseball game he had on the N64. I've got, I was just thinking of all these games a moment ago, that's why I was going to bring a few of them up, but now I can't remember off the top of my head. Oh, I've got the Indiana Jones game that's kind of hard to come by, because it was a rental, I think it was a Blockbuster rental game, and it was only available to buy off of a website, which was really rare in the late 90s whenever that game came out. So it's kind of a valuable game to collectors. It's a game I've wanted to try to play and get through so much, because I thought it's Tomb Raider, it's Uncharted, way before Uncharted, and it was N64's Tomb Raider game. But I don't know, it's a struggle for me to get through even the first area of that game. Well, anyway, I'm rambling now, so let's just wrap this up. Happy birthday, N64. I have good memories attached to it. Wish it would have gotten its full run and had a bigger catalog. Would have loved to have seen what 6, 7, 8 years down the road of development and people learning how to develop for it would have went. I wish it would have had the chance to really go up against the PlayStation 2 and the Sega Dreamcast for a longer period of time, just because competition is always going to make things better. But for what it was a fun time. It's a nice little snapshot of that point in gaming and in my life, the tail end of the 90s, before a lot of things changed when I moved to the state where I live now. I'll always have some good, happy memories for it, though. So anyways, thanks guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.